All right, guys, good morning. We are going to be working on the woodcutter's gift. You guys are going to read Earth's resources on your own. I'm going to go through and look at your CRC and your returns, but you guys are going to do those independently as well. And then you guys will also independently or asynchronously work on your 5 things. Today we have our PE. We have our math lesson 16-5. Then you guys will go to lunch. I'll meet with my ELD students at 12. Then you guys will have a screen break. And then at 12:45, we're going to do history today. Yes, we're going to do history at 12:45 today. And then you guys are all going to come back again at 2:30. And let me actually confirm that. Yes, you guys have Code Ninjas today, April 6th. I know it's really late, but it's just how the schedule was made. And the password is ABCSD. Okay. Or you can just click on this link and then it'll take you there. I'll also put it in Google Classroom for you guys. So I just put it back at the top. So Code Ninjas today is at 2:30, okay? All right, let's go ahead and get started with our story.
Where's Park? I don't see it.
What do you mean you don't see it? You might have to update your screen.
Read.
Genre, fiction, The Woodcutter's Gift by Lupe Ruiz Flores. Illustrations by Elaine Jerome. On a stormy night, a violent thunderstorm blew in and knocked down the giant mesquite tree that stood in the town square. After the storm, all the neighbors who rarely spoke to each other came out of their houses and gathered around the enormous tree that was blocking the main street.
Sorry, guys, you're right. Yes, today is Code Ninjas, and if you did not pick up your package, you need to make sure that you get that, okay? If you came last week, because some of you guys didn't show up, if you guys came last week to Code Ninjas, we built bridges with candy. So in that box of things that you guys got some candy and you guys like little gummy dots, and you guys built bridges with them. So it was super fun, but you have to come back at 2:30 in order to participate in it. So please make sure you pick up your science kits and participate with us.
That tree is dead. Let's get rid of it, remarked the storekeeper as he poked at it with a stick. He looked up to see what the others thought. The crowd muttered in agreement. Yeah, said the house painter. I'll bring my saw and cut it into little pieces. No, wait, the gardener said. Let's ask the woodcutter Tomas what he thinks we should do. Tomas, said the gardener, what should we do with this tree? This rough and ugly mesquite is only good for one thing, firewood, said the grumpy painter. No, no, the woodcutter said, moving closer to the tree. Don't destroy this good tree. What are you going to do with it? The crowd asked. The woodcutter paused, deep in thought. This tree could belong to everyone. How can one tree belong to everyone? Not possible. The woodcutter just grinned and replied, It's a surprise. You'll see. The next day, the neighbors watched from a distance as the woodcutter split the tree into huge blocks. Then the men helped him haul the large pieces to his home. Day after day, the townspeople watched as wood chips flew into the air like sparks from a fire as the woodcutter carved and chipped and whittled the wood. "My dad says that ugly mesquite is only good for barbecues," one young boy said as he watched from the other side of the fence. "Ah, but he's wrong," the woodcutter replied. "The beauty of this tree is not on the outside, but on the inside." Every day the curious neighbors went to watch the woodcutter work. They talked and laughed and wondered what he was doing. "What are you making?" they kept asking him. "Be patient," he would say, and continue with his work. One day the woodcutter moved the chunks of wood inside his woodshed. Children peeked through the knotholes in the wall, but they couldn't see anything. The woodcutter worked every day until the sun went down, and every night he locked the shed. Finally, the woodcutter rang the big rusty bell hanging on his porch. He had never done that before. Clang, clang, clang. Everyone rushed over and gathered outside the woodcutter's house. "What's happening? Why is the bell ringing?" they asked. "Follow me," the woodcutter said, and he led them to the woodshed. "Now close your eyes and don't open them until I tell you." The big woodshed door swung open. Creak. "Open your eyes now," the woodcutter said with joy. The townspeople opened their eyes and gasped. "You see, I made a zoo for the children to enjoy," the woodcutter said proudly. Life-sized wooden animals stood before them inside the shed. "Wow! Yeah! Hooray!" the children shouted as they jumped up and down with excitement. "This is a giraffe," squealed one little girl in delight as she stroked the giraffe's long neck. "And there's a zebra over there," said another girl. "Look, a lion and a tiger," one boy said as he ran his hand across the lion's mane. "A turtle," a little girl cheered as she counted the squares on the turtle's shell. Even the painter couldn't believe his eyes. Tomas created a spectacular zoo from that dried-up old mesquite tree. Everyone helped carry the animals one by one to the town square. "These animals still need a coat of paint," the woodcutter said. "They're not finished yet." "Can we paint them?" the children begged as they circled around the woodcutter. "Of course," he replied, scratching his head, "as soon as I get some paint." "Wait, we'll get the paint," said the neighbors, rushing home. They returned with an odd assortment of leftover paint and paintbrushes. Everyone gathered in the square to paint the animals. When they finally finished, they giggled at the orange giraffe with the brown spots, cherry red lips, long black eyelashes, and bright blue hooves. They laughed at the turtle with the pink and green squares on its shell. They pointed to the yellow and purple stripes on the zebra. "I couldn't have done a better job myself," said the woodcutter, smiling. To celebrate, the townspeople had a big party in the square. The adults watched the children play in the zoo. They painted brightly colored booths and decorated them with giant paper flowers in red, blue, green, yellow, and purple. Everyone enjoyed snow cones in rainbow colors. A few days later, men dressed in suits and ties came to talk to the woodcutter. The curious neighbors gathered outside his house. A short while later, the woodcutter came out and addressed the crowd. "These gentlemen from the city want to buy the zoo for the museum. They say it's a work of art," he said, smiling sheepishly. Tomas had never thought of himself as an artist. Everyone was quiet. Then a little boy asked sadly, "Does that mean we'll lose our zoo?" The children were ready to cry. Would their zoo be taken away? The woodcutter looked at the crowd. "Look at how our zoo has brought us all together," he told the men in suits. The zoo belongs here. It's not for sale. But I will donate one piece to the museum so others can enjoy it too." All the people cheered. The children jumped up and down. Everyone formed a circle around the woodcutter. They celebrated. They danced. By the time it got dark, everyone was exhausted. That night, the children slept so soundly that they did not see Mr. Giraffe stretch his long neck and snap a leaf from the tree. They did not catch Mr. Lion's curly mane blowing gently in the breeze as he yawned. They missed seeing Mr. Zebra's purple and yellow stripes swirl as he pranced around the yard. And no one saw Mr. Tiger's tail swish back and forth as he swatted a fly. No one saw the special magic that filled the air that night. They were just happy knowing that the woodcutter's gift would still be there in the morning.
All right. So if you guys would like to read about Earth's resources or the author and illustrator next, you guys can do that on your own. Just so you guys know, there are these 4 different types of rocks and minerals that you can learn about. We have basalt, which is a dark black. Sometimes it has black gas bubbles inside. There's sedimentary rocks like shale. Shale can be black, red, brown, or blue when it is wet. It smells like mud. And then basalt is an igneous rock. A metamorphic rock could be like marble. It's a smooth, multicolored rock. And then there's also minerals like quartz. It's a hard mineral and looks like glass. So you guys can go ahead and learn about Earth's resources. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at your turn. So you guys can go to classwork and you guys can work in your books right now. You won't be able to finish them, but you can go ahead and get started on them first. So this will be your turn area. This is where your CRC would be, your turn in CRC. If you have your books, you guys can use your books for those as well. Let's go over your CRC first because we just read the story. Your CRC pages is 154 to 160. Okay. What does dialogue tell us about the neighbors? Reread pages 458 to 459. Talk about what the different characters in the stories are like. Use the dialogue on page 458 to 459 to complete the chart below. So we have the storekeeper, the painter, and the woodcutter. What do they say? And what does that tell you about each of those people? So let's go ahead and reread. So I'm going to go back to page 458 and 459.
"That tree is dead. Let's get rid of it," remarked the storekeeper as he poked at it with a stick. He looked up to see what the others thought. The crowd muttered in agreement. "Yeah," said the house painter. "I'll bring my saw and cut it into little pieces." "No, wait," the gardener said. "Let's ask the woodcutter Tomas what he thinks we should do." "Tomas," said the gardener, "what should we do with this tree?" "This rough and ugly mesquite is only good for one thing, firewood," said the grumpy painter. No, the woodcutter said, moving closer to the tree. "Don't destroy this good tree."
So the storekeeper says, let's get rid of it. So the storekeeper thinks the tree is worthless. The painter says it's rough and ugly and it's only good for firewood. So this tells you that the painter agrees with the storekeeper and wants to get rid of the tree. And then the woodcutter says, don't destroy this good tree. The woodcutter sees something good in the dead tree and wants to keep it. So the dialogue tells us about the neighbors and how they disagree on what to do with the tree. So the storekeeper thinks there's nothing, whether it's worthless. The painter thinks it's only good for one thing, firewood, but the woodcutter sees a lot of potential in it and thinks that the tree can be something beautiful. It's not just a bad tree. It's not a worthless tree. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes if you want to get started on this page. I put the answers in the chat for you guys. You guys can also rewatch this video or find these answers in your Google Classroom. Page 155. Compare Tomas's feelings about the tree to that of his neighbors. What does this tell us about him? Reread page 460 to 461. Discuss how the different characters talk about the tree. Write what Tomas's and his neighbors think about the tree. Then write what this tells us about Tomas.
What are you going to do with it? The crowd asked. The woodcutter paused, deep in thought. This tree could belong to everyone. How can one tree belong to everyone? Not possible. The woodcutter just grinned and replied, It's a surprise. You'll see. The next day, the neighbors watched from a distance as the woodcutter split the tree into huge blocks. Then the men helped him haul the large pieces to his home. Day after day, the townspeople watched as wood chips flew into the air like sparks from a fire as the woodcutter carved and chipped and whittled the wood. My dad says that ugly mesquite is only good for barbecues, one young boy said as he watched from the other side of the fence. Ah, but he's wrong, the woodcutter replied. The beauty of this tree is not on the outside, but on the inside. Every day the curious neighbors went to watch the woodcutter work. They talked and laughed and wondered what he was doing.
So Tomas thinks the tree could belong to everyone and has beauty on the inside. The neighbors think the tree can't belong to everyone and is ugly, but Tomas appreciates the beauty of nature. So Tomas's feelings about the tree tell us that he appreciates the beauty of nature. If the answers are in the chat, you can also pause the video or look it up in Google Classroom. How does the community change as a result of Tomas's project? Reread page 457 and 469. Talk about what the community is like at the beginning of the story and then how it changes by the end of the story. Write clues from the illustration and text that show the community, what the community is like in the beginning and at the end. So we're going to read 457 and 469.
On a stormy night, a violent thunderstorm blew in and knocked down the giant mesquite tree that stood in the town square. After the storm, all the neighbors who rarely spoke to each other came out of their houses and gathered around the enormous tree that was blocking the main street.
Okay, so it says here, after the storm, all the neighbors who rarely spoke to each other came out of their houses and gathered around the tree. So what does it mean if they rarely spoke to each other?
They barely
often do it.
Yeah, they didn't often do it. Very good.
They didn't often do it a lot.
Okay, now let's see the end.
Everyone gathered in the square to paint the animals. When they finally finished, they giggled at the orange giraffe with the brown spots, cherry red lips, long black eyelashes, and bright blue hooves. They laughed at the turtle with the pink and green squares on its shell. They pointed to the yellow and purple stripes on the zebra. I couldn't have done a better job myself, said the woodcutter, smiling. To celebrate, the townspeople had a big party in the square. The adults watched the children play in the zoo. They painted brightly colored booths and decorated them with giant paper flowers in red, blue, green, yellow, and purple. Everyone enjoyed snow cones in rainbow colors.
Nice. So at the beginning, the neighbors rarely spoke to each other. That was page 457. They agreed that they needed to get rid of the dead tree. The painter is grumpy, and the neighbors don't think it's possible for the tree to belong to everyone. But at the end, everyone helps carry the zoo to this town square. everyone helps paint the animals. The townspeople have a big party in the town square and they celebrate and they dance. So as a result of Tomas's project, the community becomes more of a team. They come together and they finish and enjoy the zoo as a community. Okay, you're late, Daniel. I marked you absent. You got to make sure you get to class on time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put this answers in the chat now. The next couple pages, you guys are going to need to read the story first before you answer these questions. So go ahead and read the story and then answer the questions on the other side. And then the integrate, how can people use Earth's resources wisely? How did Tomas use the fallen tree wisely? Talk about what other resources it is important to conserve. Circle clues that help you find out what the builder of this house was reusing to make it. How did that help the Earth? People can protect Earth resources by reusing things we no longer need, like bottles or dead trees. And here, the colorful walls of this house are made from recycled glass bottles. And if you guys have ever been to Disneyland at California Adventures, if you wait in line for the Cars ride, they have something like this. They have a house made out of bottles. So this is a great way to recycle things. All right. Yes, you guys can do these pages later. That's totally fine. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the your turn. Okay. So for your turn pages, we are on pages 237 and 238. Let's ride. Let's drive to the park, said Mom. Joanne said, driving cars can harm the Earth. Let's ride our bikes there instead. Mom liked Joanne's plan for protecting the Earth. So how do you know that this text is fiction? Fiction means that it is made up, it has a problem and a solution, and a lot of times it will have dialogue. Dialogue is what is in quotation marks, what people say. Let's drive to the park. Driving cars can harm the Earth. Let's ride our bikes there instead. That's dialogue. Okay, so this is page 237. So this is your turn book. So it has made up characters and events. There's a problem, a solution, and dialogue. Number 2, what is Mom's dialogue in the story? She says, let's drive to the park. Number 3, what is the problem? Well, Joanne says, Joan says, driving to the park can harm the Earth. So driving can harm the Earth because you're using fossil fuels for that. And so a better thing is to ride bikes. If you ride your bikes, then you're not only being healthy for yourself, but you're also protecting the Earth from like gases and smog. Okay, I'll give you guys a few minutes to work on this one. Go ahead and later. Okay, the last page we're going to be working on before you guys work on your 5 things, and then I'm going to work on with students who have missing work, is homophones. Homophones are words that sound the same, but have different spellings and meanings. Read each sentence, choose the word that fits the homophone in bold print. Write it on the line. So each day she saw the students threw away sheets and sheets of paper. So this through, is it mean went from one side to another? Like, for example, like, she walked through the looking glass. Like if you guys have ever seen like a movie where they walk through something to the other side, or like she swam through the ocean. You went from, one side to another. You're going from one part of the ocean to another part of the ocean. Or is it through like you toss something? Well, they're tossing it into the trash can. So tossed would be the right answer. I know you guys can kind of see the answer, so I'm going to go like this, okay? The students cheered and went back to their rooms. Is this to in the direction of something like we are going to the store, or is this to like the number 2?
In the direction of.
In the direction of. Now, how would you spell the number 2?
TWO.
TWO, very good. Okay, number 3. The class that recycles the most paper in 1 week will win a prize. Is this week 7 days, or is this week not strong?
7 days.
Very good. How would you spell weak that means not strong? Like, wow, like I'm too weak to open this jar of jam. Can you help me?
WEAK.
Very good. WEAK. Number 4, she made a big wall chart. If you made something, is that a helper, like a maid, like a maid can be like a person who works at a hotel, and they're the people who clean your hotel room and they make your bed. If you guys didn't make the bed, that's called a cleaning maid. And then, or is it a maid, like I made something, like I made a character in Roblox. Which one is that?
Created.
Created. How would you spell maid? Like a house, like a cleaning maid at a hotel?
MAID.
Very good. MAID. Awesome, guys. Okay, you guys have about 25 minutes left. So obviously, I know you guys need to complete all of this stuff. So what you guys are going to do right now is you are going to complete all of these, the CRC and your turn pages you haven't finished. If you are done with all of those things, then you are going to work on your 5 things. Go ahead and work on your 5 things. You have your spelling practice test, your vocabulary practice test, grammar mechanics, and your selfie writing. Okay. I'm going to be working with students with missing words.